everyone. Welcome back to another amazing episode of 52 Authors, 52 Weeks. Guys, I am so excited today to have the Dr. Saundra Dalton-Smith on the show. She is the author of Sacred Rest, but she has a new book coming out that we're going to talk about as well. But I want to allow Dr. Dalton Smith an opportunity to introduce herself. And of course, I always have to do my disclaimer. Anytime there is a professional on the show that is a MD, they are not your doctor, they are not my doctor. And we are here to talk about these two amazing books. I haven't even read the second book, and I'm ready.
Well, thank you so much, Dr. Lisa. I am, as you mentioned, an internal medicine physician. I've been in clinical practice for 20 years, around 2011. So, about 10 years or so into my practice, I started writing. And that journey took me through quite a few books before I got to Sacred Rest. Long story short, I burned out in the process of doing all the things and got to a place where I just started researching on how do you stay active in a profession that is just very demanding and keep your joy and be able to stay at a place of peace. And the answer was rest. And I just had to figure out what rest meant and really how to apply it into my life. And so that's the book Sacred Rest that talks about the seven types of rest. But I also saw that even after writing that book, that book came out in 2017. So, we're talking what, 7 years ago? So, even after writing that and researching and all that went into that particular book, I still realized there were parts of rest that were even still difficult. And that's where being fully known comes into play. It dives deeper into the emotional, spiritual, and social aspects of rest that are the things that are harder to really understand because there's so many external pressures and expectations that we have on ourselves and that other people have on us.
I love it. Well, I will tell you that I bought the book July of 2024. September 8th, 2024, I fell down 3 steps and suddenly found myself with a distal fibula fracture. And immediately, or not immediately, probably about 8 days later, I had surgery. And the end result was a plate and some screws. And I found myself in my bedroom in a non weight bearing status in a forced restful state. And as I started to read the book, I said, girl, because sometimes you got to talk to yourself. I said, girl, you've been in healthcare for 33 years. At the time, 32 years. You've been burning the candle at both ends. And now you're sitting in this bed, forced to sit here because when you're non weight bearing, you're going to hop to the bathroom and then hop on back. But I had this fear that I was going to fall. And so I literally sat in my bed and do what I love to do, which is read. And when I started reading Sacred Rest, it answered a lot of questions for me that I didn't know I needed the answers to. Right? You know how you're just doing your thing and you think you're going to just tackle the world. And for me, it was literally confirmation that this forced pause was exactly what I needed. I'm in the middle of writing my second book, and in the book I talk about that post-op period being like an ECMO state, extracorporeal membrane oxygenation, because I literally had to shut down and heal. But also during that time, I had to be so vulnerable more than I ever could have imagined. I mean, the minute my husband had to give me a sponge bath, I was like, "Oh, this is a real situation." But there are so many people who don't realize that Tylenol PM and melatonin and all the things we're taking, I say we, taking to go to sleep, but then we get up, we have our caffeine in the morning, and we do it all over again. And for me, being in that non weight bearing status, and I know you know this, doctor, cause my body to weaken, atrophy, and it has been a journey to get back to my normal self. But when I tell you that my spirit is rested, my emotions are rested. And listen, folks, you have to get this book. You got to get both books because you need to read this one first and then go to being fully known. And one of the things I love about this book is that Dr. Dalton Smith really is like talking to us like we're just girlfriends having a conversation. And we're not going to tell you everything in the book, but the concepts are so relatable. And for those of you who know me, I like to highlight in my book, underline in my book. It took me longer to read the book because I was highlighting and underlining. But also, I'm just going to be honest. After chapter one, I was like, you need the audio book too. So I could hear it, see it, reflect. I was in that bedroom crying, but I was healing in so many areas that I didn't even know existed. So I have to know. Well, I know why you wrote this book. But what would you say to that woman, that superwoman who's climbing the corporate ladder, who is being superwoman but not resting? What would you say to her to make a light bulb go off that she needs to make a change? Because in the book, you gave a great example of a patient who needed to make a change. But what would you say to that woman?
Well, you know what? I think rather than me saying something to her specifically, I would start asking her some very specific questions to get her to start evaluating what exactly is she building with what she's putting her hands to. And so one of those questions is, are you happy? Yes, you may have a great business. Yes, you may have lots of money. Yes, you may have a beautiful house or whatever it is, all the things and the fixings of success. But are you happy? Does this success feel successful? Or do you feel like you're a slave in your success? Do you feel like you are heavy laden with the success? And then on top of that, I had asked her, do you have the energy to actually enjoy what you have? Because if you get to a place where it's like, oh, I have all these things I've been working hard for, but then you're so tired and painful and hurting and all the stuff that goes with that, that you don't even have your health anymore because you put all the focus on the work and none on the rest and restoration. Is that truly success? So those are the kind of questions I start asking her, because what happens is we start believing that the work is more important than the rest, rather than seeing the rest is what allows us to do the work from a place of healthy health and satisfaction.
Wow, 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 wow. I think that those questions were great questions that really force us to do some deep self-reflection, of which many of us, if we're honest, we're afraid to do. We're afraid to give up the things. And when I say I know my fall was ordained, the year before, I had quit my full-time job. I was juggling my business, the full-time job, taking all the trips, doing all the things, but I was tired. If you ask my husband, I'm sure he will say I was irritable and moody. And so, a year later, I fell and I thought that I was fully rested, fully healed. But what I realized was that I hadn't taken the time to pause. And so that 8 weeks of pause really allowed me to learn myself in a manner that I never knew existed in these 52 years of life. And so I think that Many of us are on that struggle bus. We're afraid to admit it. But listen, 2025, we have to uncover these things that are really holding us back from having a fulfilling life because our life is not really truly fulfilled. And I can tell you, as someone who's on the other side of, shedding some of those things that no longer serve me, that I can recognize the difference.
Yeah, I think that's so important. I think sometimes some of us don't know how bad we feel until we start getting glimpse of what better feels like. I call it the well rested life. It's like, I'm okay. You hear people say that all the time. And then when they actually see what it feels like to have a little bit more energy, a little bit more joy, a little bit more peace, they're like, hold up, I'm not okay. You know, it's like I have tasted and seen that there is something else that is out there for me. Let me go deeper into it and see how good can I actually feel? How blessed can I actually feel? And that's really my hope with both of these books, is to help people understand that there are levels of wholeness, just like there are levels of health, levels of wealth, levels of everything that we look at. There's levels of wholeness in how you feel, and most of us are functioning on a much lower level of feeling whole that's actually available to us.
Ooh, some of the folks in way in the back, they ain't even understand that. Y'all gonna get it later. You need to get both books so you can understand. So we talked about sacred rest, and I want you all to get the book because you really need to. And let me just read the subtitle: Recover Your Life, Renew Your Energy, and my favorite, Restore Your Sanity. But once you get into the book and you start to really dig deep into this thing I call rest, the sacred rest, you will realize that you got some work to do. So let's transition into being fully known, the joyful, I love that title, the joyful satisfaction of beholding, becoming, and belonging. Beholding, becoming, and belonging. So tell us a little bit about the book. I'm so excited for the release of this book and what's going to happen after that, because I'm expecting that you're going to have even more doors that are opening up for you, because there are women, and maybe not some women, that need you, some men that, are willing to be vulnerable, that they need you to help guide them through this journey, because we're living in some, as my grandmother used to say, we're living in our last days.
Yes. This book is the next step, because one of the things that I found with a lot of people who work themselves through the process of sacred rest is that they understood how to rest, but then there's still these external kind of expectations that were placed on them. And they felt like they were under the weight of living up to other people's expectations. It was stripping people from stepping into new things with God. It was holding them back from making kind of observations with where he might be moving them or leading them different from the things that they had always done. And that's really what this book's about. It's about helping people first behold, understand who God is, diving deeper into the spiritual rest aspect of it, and seeing themselves through the lens of who God is. Next is the becoming, and it's not becoming more of anything, it's becoming more of who you already are. It's about getting a deeper understanding of your gifts and talents and the things that maybe you've held back on because you didn't have a degree in that thing, or you've never taken the time to even explore how you can express that particular gift that you may have, or that you've been kind of holding back on sharing with the world. And then belonging, not trying to find the places where you fit in, which is what I feel we spend a lot of energy and time doing, but actually finding the places where you naturally fit. You don't have to fit in to fit somewhere. Usually, you fit places you don't fit in because you're actually feeling a unique need, where you bringing your authentic self kind of completes the picture. And that's the thing we shy away from, because we want to feel like in belonging that we all look the same, do the same, sound the same. But true belonging is you actually are so unique that you fit the spot. You don't have to fit in.
Wow. So there's a couple of things that you said that I think are really powerful. One, when you're born, they get your fingerprint, right? You're usually on your foot, I think. Um, so we're each unique and born with all these different talents and strengths. But when you mention the aspect of degree, people think that the degree makes you who you are. And I tell people all the time, the only reason that I have this PhD is because I wanted to make more money in a role that I was working in literally in 2004. But at 5 years old, I was a leader, a decision maker, and so the degrees literally complemented who I already was, and if you strip the degrees away from me, I'm still going to be a powerful person, just because of how I was made. And so I challenge our listening viewing audience today to stop allowing things to hold you back. The things that you think you need to move further ahead to hold you back, but also when you have the things, you have the package, don't be afraid to go after what you want. I can just tell you, and I said this so many times that I just feel it in my heart and my spirit. When I fell, I suddenly had a change in my life. Suddenly. And for a moment, I said, "Oh, it's probably a sprain." But I'm gonna be honest, I heard pop. So I knew it wasn't a sprain. But just those 2 seconds that it took me to fall down those stairs, my life changed forever. And so now, when I was sitting up in that bed crying and praying and singing, I said, all the things that you wanted to do, now is the time to do them. But I don't know if I wouldn't have failed had I come to that realization as fast as I did. And with my grandfather being 104, I'm 52. I feel like I got a whole long life ahead of me. And I want to be able to serve those who I'm supposed to serve, impact those who I'm supposed to impact. But I can't do that if I don't fully know who I am, but also if I'm not getting my rest in all of those areas.
Yeah, absolutely. That's such a great point because so many of us we refuse to accept the gift of rest, but we accept rest when it feels like a punishment. And then it's like I've been forced to rest because this thing happened, usually something health related, as you mentioned. But even in that, it can be a gift if you allow yourself to see that rest allows you to actually reflect on where you're at and if your direction is leading you to where you want to be. Or if you've just been in kind of robot mode, moving in the same direction, and it wasn't actually taking you to the place or the location of where you desired.
Wow. Wow. All right. So we got sacred rest. We got being fully known coming out. What's next?
I don't know. I always like to kinda sit with the book after it comes out. It's been a couple of years since I've written on rest. I wrote another book in between there, but, 7 years basically since I wrote anything on rest. Takes me a while to kind of process through and research and look at the different things related to that. So I don't know. I'm not sure what's next.
Well, I like the number seven. My 33-year-old daughter, it took her 7 years to walk when I was told that she wasn't going to walk. So for me, the number seven has so many um, significant milestones in my life, more than we have time to talk about on the show. But I honestly see that we need some sacred rest modules. We need some being fully known modules because people need something that they can, because I'm telling you, hearing your voice, saying the words, I felt like you were sitting next to me while I was in my recovery room, um, healing. And so that's what I would like to see. Just putting that out there for you.
Oh, I appreciate that. It's funny you said that because I really did feel like this year God was like, "I need you to share at a deeper level." I do a lot of things within kind of my private groups. I have a private mentoring group and mastermind group and these types of things, and I'm in front of them all the time. But I don't do a lot of, like, lives and things like that on social media and YouTube, and this year, we just started something called the Abiding Hour on our YouTube channel, so that at least once a month, that's what I can commit to right now. I hop on and I lead people through a time of abiding. Just what does it look like to sit down? I'm a person of faith, so sit down with the Word of God and process through some questions, some hard questions sometimes, about different things as it relates to getting to a place of just soul rest. And so that's something new that we just started this year.
I love it. So I want to make sure that we are very intentional about telling the listening viewing audience all the places they can find you. So you mentioned YouTube, and what's the name of the YouTube channel?
It's the same name as my podcast, I Choose My Best Life, and then just my name, Dr. Saundra Dalton-Smith. I'm also on Facebook and Instagram under Dr. Saundra Dalton-Smith. And for those who haven't already done so, you mentioned Sacred Rest. We have a quiz at restquiz.com that gives you a score on the different types of rest so you can kind of see which of the seven you're most deficient in. So for people who haven't done that, that can be very helpful just to give you a start on what areas might be keeping you feeling so tired all the time.
I love it. And there are so many people who need to take that quiz. You'll be surprised at what the results show. I think oftentimes we ignore what's actually happening with us. And I feel like I'm so much more in tune to my mental, physical, emotional health now, that than ever before, to the extent that I remember meditating and doing like the body scan. And so now body scan is next level because I'm trying to really just understand how I'm feeling, what's wrong, what's not wrong, and just really in tune to Lisa, right? Because I can't help others if I'm not helping myself first.
So true. So true. And I think with rest, when we treat rest as if it's a reward for the work, we have it backwards. Because then you're only going to feel like you have permission to rest when the work is done. Well, we all know the work's never done. There's always work you can do. When we start looking at rest as actually the thing that allows us to work at our highest capacity and to produce our greatest type of work and level of work, it changes from permission to a priority, and that's the shift that a lot of us need to make.
Wow. I remember a personal trainer I was working with who talked about how in some races, when they are negotiating their pay and benefits with a new job, they will say, I can't start until XYZ time because in the morning, I need to work out. And he said to me, you got everything else on your calendar, but you don't have exercising on your calendar. You live and die by this calendar. And so ever since then, I've been carving out on my calendar my exercise time, but it's also a time for me to I love water aerobics. So I like to have my when I'm not in the class and I'm just walking up and down the pool, I'm literally just listening to my praise and worship music. And I remember the first day post-op after surgery that I was able to go back into the pool. And as soon as my foot touched the water, tears just started running down my face because I was like, I'm back. I kept telling the physical therapist, I got to get in the water because that's where I know, but it's my time to just put the world to the side and just walk up and down in a place of peace. And I tell people all the time, today I have peace that you can't pay for. The Bible, we talk about peace that passes all understanding. My peace is so amazing, and I love this place that I'm in, and I'm not going back.
I love it, and you can hear the joy in your voice, even in talking about it and describing it, and that's to me is what that joyful satisfaction. You are now living a life that is not just about producing things, but you have an inner level of joy and satisfaction from the life that you're living where you get full even in the giving. So
Oh,
you
yeah.
pour out, you're pouring out right now, even within your show, you pour out. And even in the pouring out, you get filled back up because you're not pouring from your emptiness. You're actually giving from your overflow. What you're describing is my hope for every person who reads those two books.
And listen, everyone, if you are like, I'm not sure if I want to buy the book, on the 52 Authors, 52 Weeks website, I have a book review of this book where I tell you about my 5 growth moments as a result of reading the book. This is also, it's not a book review, this is right the interview, but I also think this is a great book for a book club so that you can have some other folks to talk about, rest and be honest with yourself. And I personally know from working with women most of my career, working with physicians most of my career, that many of you aren't getting rest. And it's my prayer that 2025 is your year where you put on your vision board that you're going to get your own understanding of sacred rest and being fully known so that you can have a more fulfilling life. Come on over here with me because it's beautiful.
Yes, I love it.
So, our time is almost up, and I wanted to allow you, Dr. Dalton Smith, to just have some final words before we end the show.
Yeah, my final word would just simply be to take a moment and just reflect on the life you're living because we each have an opportunity. If when I started this entire journey, I remember staring up at my house, at the chandelier in my house. I'm in the house, the big house I dreamed for with the man I prayed for and the kids I prayed for. And I didn't have the energy to even enjoy any of it. I was completely at the edge of burnout. And if you're at that space, here's the good news. The energy you spent to build a life that feels so stressful, it takes less energy to flip that around to be a life that you actually enjoy and find satisfaction in. But it does take a level of intentionality. And that's what these two books, Sacred Rest and Being Fully Known, is about. Is an intentional moment of self-reflection so that you get real about what it is you want, where it is you're at, and where you want to go and then some steps to lead you on the journey.
I love it. Well, I want to thank you again so much for taking the time to be a part of 52 Authors, 52 Weeks. This is a journey that was a vision that I had in 2023. And when I started it in 2023, I was thinking it was just going to be 1 year and I was going to be done. And midway, I was like, oh no, you're going to do this as long as you're physically and mentally able to do it because there are so many people out there that read. And I believe there are things that we need to know that are in books. We just have to take the time for ourselves and sit down and you owe it to yourself, right? To pour back into you so that you can help others.
Absolutely. I think that is the greatest joy any of us can experience the joy of giving of ourselves from a place of truth.
Yes. All right, everyone. Well, this has been another amazing episode of 52 Authors, 52 Weeks. We'll see you next.